or your customers in Italy or Switzerland or Netherlands or wherever they may be, unless there's proof that it was made on a land where there was no deforestation. Essentially, if I'm sending a bag of coffee, I need to send with that proof that there was no deforestation since December 30, 2020. The cutoff date here is December 30, 2020. So if some trees existed in January 1st, 2021, and don't exist in February 2021, that farm can't send coffee to you anymore. That causes a lot of pressure, right? So on one end, we see that, okay, this is good because now the whole supply chain is going to be influenced or pushed to make sure that they're producing sustainably, making sure that they're not cutting down trees. How all that happens, of course, is because communication, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But just to explain a little bit more to you what this new law is and just highlight why it's so important, although it's happening in the EU. Again, the EU it's the second most consuming region for coffee, for cacao, for all of these products, right? So they put out this law. The law is the EU countries are now prohibiting export or especially import of these products unless you can prove there was no deforestation. Who needs to comply? Well, obviously the companies buying things in the EU, but where does all that pressure come down to? To the producers and to the cooperatives in Africa, South America, or origin countries, rather. Let's call them origin countries, right? When do they need to start complying? When does everyone need to make sure there's no deforestation? Well, it's already enforced, but they're going to start finding people at the end of this year. So it's a problem and a solution that many companies are trying to find solutions for in the EU. And they're doing that with their partners in Africa, in Ethiopia, in Congo, and all of the producing countries, because it's not just about proving there's no deforestation, it's about making sure that there's clarity and transparency. And okay, so why does deforestation even happen in agriculture? Well, I said earlier, we need to feed more people, pressure happens, so people need to take down trees and build more farmland. Well, that pressure comes from the buying countries anyway, right? But everyone is now under pressure to make sure that we're farming sustainably, right? And there's a law behind it now, so now everyone has to listen, right? People listen when something is official now. But who needs to, again, just to reiterate what this is, people who are sending and buying things to the EU, these 7 products need to make sure no deforestation, need to give proof, need to make sure that the product complies with the local law. So if you have a local law in Congo around, for example, child labor, so you need to prove that this cacao came without child labor. And then all of this information needs to be accompanied by an official document. Right now, this is where all of the technology starts to tie in together. All of this information needs to be accompanied by a document that says, hey, this bag of coffee has no deforestation, and here's all the proof, right? And it's the operators, again, the people who are buying or bringing that product into the country, into the EU country, that need to comply with this. But for them to comply with this, they need the help of their farmers, they need the help of their producers, their exporters, their traders, the roasters in the EU. So everyone is affected. It's not just the traders here. Everyone, especially the farmer, especially the cooperative who has thousands of farmers who have one big client in the EU that they're dependent on, right? So I hope you can grasp what this all is. We can skip this slide. I described it a little bit there, but just to tie in a little bit, because I know there's some more technical people on this conversation, so you could appreciate a little bit how all this will tie, and I'll show it to you. But again, just to reiterate, to prove there's no deforestation, you need to have all of the farms digitized, meaning you need to have a digital record of what that farm is. You need to have a satellite record of that farm. You need to record the farming activities. You need satellite images. You don't need blockchain, but you need to be able to track all of this information. And you need all of these things. All these things are being asked of by farmers and cooperatives who have never put a mobile phone in their operation before. So implementation is a big challenge. Education is an even bigger challenge, right? Education, not necessarily how to farm, but how to farm sustainably, how to share the information with your supply chain partners, how to use these tools. So all of these technical things now need to be done again by farmers, many of which who have not used technology in their or digital technology in their farming. So now the producers are in a situation where they have to provide all of this information. So what are some possible solutions out there? What are some possible technical solutions for this? Essentially, the solution that needs to be provided, since now we need to give proof that there was no deforestation. Of course, guys, let's not confuse proof of no deforestation with what farmers and people need to actually do so that we can farm sustainably, right? That's all agriculture education, all of which we work into as Dimitra. But today we're going to be talking about how just to prove that the farming is going on the way the regulators need it, so that the farmer can continue to sell to the EU. I'll give you a very quick example. Ethiopia produces a lot of coffee. I think it's one of their largest exports. Ethiopia right now has a major issue because they can't sell any coffee to the EU. Can you imagine that? Their biggest trade partners are in the EU and they can't sell any coffee to them because Ethiopia has a huge deforestation problem. Well, now they're stuck. Well, there's solutions, but now they're stuck. They need to implement some digital technology, and it's not easy with many small farms. But essentially, some of the tools that are out there, like I could speak to ours, but essentially what needs to be implemented, and this is, I say this so that you can all start to begin to think of what possible solutions that you can possibly build or put together out there are, is that you need a system or a platform, whatever you want to call it, that is able to, most importantly, pull all of the farmer or origin or first mile. If anyone here is in supply chain, they'll understand the term first mile. Pull all that first mile data, pull all of the trader based data, because the origin trader buys the coffee from the farmer, for example, and uh, has to make sure, they're complying with the rest of the laws and the importing and the exporting certificates and all of that. And then you also need the information of the EU-based buyer, the trader in the EU. So you need to compile all this information, harmonize it, analyze it, and build it out into a report that goes out with every shipment. Okay, what is this information? What do I mean by origin-based trader or producer or EU-based trader information? We'll dive a little bit into it. We'll start first with the origin-based producer information, right? This is, again, we're speaking about this so that you could start to think along the lines of what solutions are out there that you could build. The first part, the most obvious part from the origin side is, hey, prove that the trees were not cut down. So there are solutions out there, or one of our solutions as well at Dimitra is a satellite-based solution. And by the way, for your information, the European Union will be auditing using satellites. So when you think of solutions, you have to think in the context of sensing, of satellites. You're going to have to implement some sort of IoT within this if you want to get the full picture. But essentially, satellites, they're fantastic. We can map out not just where trees are or where they're not, but we can map out what type of trees. Is it a natural forest, or is it a plantation forest? Is it obviously water? Is it what kind of plantation forest is it? So you could see in this map, right? In 2017, obviously you could see a lot more cocoa farms in orange, but these cocoa farms that grew also took out a lot of open forest. So essentially, with satellites, you can look at a big country, a big area, and even tiny areas, because a lot of these farms that we talked about are really, really small, guys. So when you look at solutions for farmers or agriculture solutions, you have to always keep in mind that these farms are really small, most of them. I think it's like 80 something percent of farms in the world are smallholder farms. To think in that context as well, right? But essentially, satellites, they help give us that origin producer data, right? They help give us the bird's eye view of what's actually going on there. Some other data will include, some mobile information and all of that, and I'll show you a little bit about that. But I'll have to show you, of course, in the context of what we built as Dimitra. And it's actually a very interesting solution. We put this software in the hands of many farmers in Southeast Asia, in Ethiopia, in Uganda, and Kenya, many sub-Saharan African countries, and many South American countries as well. Essentially, our mission has always been to build these agriculture solutions. We've been around for the last 4 years as a company, as Dimitra, but founders have been doing agriculture supply chains for the last 35 years. So we've been able to discover and build many solutions for this. When you build your solutions for agriculture, it's important to keep in mind it's not just about the technology. It's not just about who can code the most efficient code. It's also about the science that goes behind it. Agriculture is very scientific. Fertilizers, and the climate and the irrigation and which plants and what to intercrop. There's a lot of science behind it. So you have to keep that in mind and bring those experts in also when you build your own solution. That's what we do as well. Part of our mission is to make sure that we're providing access to these rural communities or farmer communities. So we have a large, we have the resources to, we have a large agronomy team and data science team, but you don't need a large team to gather a lot of data. So just keep that in mind when you're building your solutions and thinking of your solutions. Bring in the agriculture experts. You always want to bring in the experts of that field you're working on, right? And of course, part of the mission is to provide more data. We're all over the world, 70 different countries where we've operated, and you need that to be able to get the information on the ground. Another thing that we've built in the platform is that it's many different languages, about 18 different languages involved. And because you will be working with, in agriculture, again, there's a lot of agriculture import that goes on, of course, but that's for things that are consumed internally. With exporting, you're exporting, or these producers are all exporting to all these different countries. Congo exports to Arabic-speaking countries, to English-speaking, Italian-speaking, French, Portuguese-speaking, all of these different languages. So you also need to think of, when you build these solutions, how is it going to communicate with someone? Like, there needs to be some sort of multilinguality, is that a word? But you need to make sure everyone is able to speak the same language, right? Or at least receive information in the same language. We'll skip this real quick and jump to here, okay? Now, excuse me for this screen being in Italian. This was done for an Italian, but I'll explain very briefly what you're looking at here. Essentially, and this is hopefully to give you inspiration when thinking of your solutions, right? Essentially, what we've built is we've built a platform that is able to identify, by drawing lines on a map, as you see here, it's able to identify if there's been any deforestation in the area, why there was deforestation. So it could have been, trees that were gone because of a fire or a flood, or it could have been man-made. It can help determine the tree growth as well, because since when we're talking about sustainability and sustainable farming, you also have to think about not just stopping the bad, but increasing the good, right? So you could also think of solutions that help farmers improve their productivity, right? Improve the stability of their land. That's extremely important. When you think of helping farmers for their exports and helping them make more money, they're being paid more by the companies if the farmer is working sustainably, if the farmer has traceability, if the farmer is able to show them step by step what they're doing, what's going into it, then the farmer is actually going to get paid a little bit more, which is incredible, of course, right? So when you think of your solutions, you want to think, of course, how you're helping the farmer. Again, this deforestation issue, these farmers will not be able to sell anything to their big trading partners anymore, or exporters, unless they can prove there's no deforestation. So our solution is able to provide that proof. not just provide the proof, but also do some risk assessment and risk analysis, right? So if there's been any deforestation, how can you reduce that risk? How can you improve your farming in the future? And it's not necessarily farmers that need, you know, a laptop and a computer, need to understand satellites to do all of this. This is all stuff that cooperatives do with the help of the farmers. You know, when you think of your solutions, you always need to think in terms of all of the stakeholders, right? Not just the beneficiary, okay? Because the beneficiary might not be the person who's using it most of the time, right? But again, I digress. Our solution then builds this report, builds the proof, builds a certificate that the cooperatives and companies and farmers are now able to use to send out their products and not get fined. Lastly, on this part of the solution, I just want to say, since we talked earlier about languages and information sharing, you also want to make sure your solutions can interface, right? So one of the things that we've done is our system is, we have a lot of experts who have done a lot of implementations in other systems before, especially ERP systems. So we have this competency, but you need to build your systems in a way where you can easily interchange and communicate data with other systems. We have an API that we use to interface with, so essentially a cooperative that implements one of our systems can now send that data directly to Ferrero Rocher or Cadbury or any of these large companies in the US or North America and Europe. So integration is very important. We're in a digital world now, right? All of our solutions fully integrate in these things. Mobility is important, right? Mobility is extremely important. When you talk about traceability, when you talk about monitoring what's going on the ground, you need to be on the ground, right? So essentially the system that we built for the farmers on the ground to gather that information and traceability information, it's multiple parts, right? So from the second they buy the seed or plant the seed to when they're selling or processing or warehousing, and this is not just for the farmer, this is for that whole value chain. Because guys, remember, when the coffee that's exported is exported, it's not just the farmer exporting it. There's the processor involved, there's the exporter, there's the buyer. There's so many steps in the value chains, right? Many. Every agriculture value chain is extremely complicated. So the solution that we've built is modular in that sense. Everyone gets a piece of the system based on what they need. Our mission is always farmer focused. I was speaking earlier about making sure that you bring in the experts. Like in our case, we bring in the agronomists and the data scientists. So we've actually built AI reports that give crop advice to farmers on 53 different crops right now. We can tell you which fertilizer to use for your onions. We can tell you how often to irrigate your coffee based on the weather patterns, right? We can tell you so many different things like yield prediction, like disease identification, all these things that can deliver. Essentially, every farmer becomes an agronomist. Now they have their experience and they have the science. Before we get to the Q&A, this will be the last slide, is just the question of what is the future. Now, I know I talked about a few things here. I tend to go left and right sometimes. I hope you were all able to follow. Hopefully in the Q&A, if there's something missing, you can ask about it. But essentially, just to wrap it all up, what is the future? Well, obviously the future is digitalization. We've been saying this since any of us learned what the word was, right? And that's in every industry. Agriculture is traditionally a slow industry, right? Like mining is also very slow. It's not a very digitally driven industry, but it's becoming that. It's becoming that for many reasons. It's becoming that because governments are realizing the gravity of the climate problem, because consumers are caring now. There are many consumers now that they'll pay a couple extra dollars for a coffee that they know was organically created and sustainably sourced and the farmers were paid. So digitalization is the future. Transparency in supply chains is the future of agriculture, but not just supply chains. What's going on the ground is the most important. That's why we've been able to thrive as Dimitra. Dimitra, we have been able to implement in 18 different countries, 53 different crops, all of these different milestones we've been able to hit in such a short time because we've been able to do very well at working in the first mile with the farmer, with the producer, building tools for them, which of course then goes on to the rest of the world. Um, so the future is digitalization. The future of agriculture is information sharing. Agriculture is an industry that traditionally everyone likes to keep their information to themselves. You can't do that anymore. The EU started, North America will follow, Australia will come next, and so on and so on. This also brings an opportunity, by the way, guys, for bringing many of these industries locally. So Ghana is doing this in cacao. They are looking at how do they produce the final product internally and then just sell the final product. So if any of you are into agriculture or in that space, start thinking of that too. You know, there's a lot of opportunity in the Congo Basin with agriculture. It's such an amazing land. So sharing information, sharing technology, implementing that information. And most importantly, everyone is focusing right now on CO2 neutrality. So how can you help achieve that while giving the farmers the most benefit that they can have? That's been our mission. That's been what we've been focused on this entire time. As a company, as individuals, we have over we have a couple hundred employees who are all focused on this all over the world. And I'm this whole time very excited that I'm speaking to a group of people who are also looking at solutions and most importantly, solutions coming out of sub-Saharan Africa in particular. I get very excited when I see these things. I'm in Egypt. I grew up in Cairo. I've not very much visited sub-Saharan Africa, but most of my colleagues are from Kenya, from Nigeria, from Congo, Glenn. Um, and there's a lot of talent in this place. There's a lot of talent in this continent. Not just talent, there's a lot of source as well. The source of most of the food that goes out there in the world comes from Africa and South America. So we're in a huge opportunity here. We're in a huge opportunity to help the farmers continue to sell and grow and improve their lives, and also in a fantastic opportunity to bring industry home through digitalization. We need to roll these kind of solutions out internally. We need to get the agriculture ministries and departments that are already working on doing these things. We need to get involved with them. We need to, not we as Dimitra, we, right? And that's the future. Digitalization is the future. Um, I was not told that I have a specific time to speak in, so I just kept speaking. Hopefully I didn't take anyone's time, but I appreciate you listening. And I would love to open it up to a Q&A if anybody has any questions or comments they'd like to bring to the floor. I see Herman has his hand raised. Herman, you have a question, sir? Oh, you're on mute, Herman, if you're saying something.
Thank you, Mr. Sherif, for your presentation, and thank you again for your time. So, I have a little question for you.
Yes, please.
Do you think that locally we can implement solutions with few resources? And if it's possible, what solutions can you offer our participants to help them direct their work?
There's a little bit of echo, but just to make sure I heard your question, you're asking what kind of solutions we could offer to who? Sorry,
Uh,
could you repeat the question, Audrey? Sorry, if there was just a
uh,
little bit of echo in the voice.
yes. Do you think that locally we can implement solutions with few resources? And
With few resources, gotcha. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
if it's possible, what solutions can you offer to our participants to
Mhm,
help them to, to direct their work?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Can Are there solutions that could be done with few resources? So I'll actually refer to a Nigerian friend of mine. I met him back in 2017. We met in Egypt. He came here, he was doing his startup, and he went back to Nigeria. And a few years later, I see him online, and he's doing these farming solutions for people on the ground. And his farming solutions aren't digital; they're more operational, right? But his goal, because his family is he comes from a farming family. His goal is to get into the digital, but he didn't have the resources, right? So he started working on his solutions hands-on on the ground, operationally. He worked with the farmers to put the science into it, right? He's an agronomy student, so he has all of that knowledge. And he used the resources that he had to build a small team that went on the ground and provided actual solutions, and then he was able to gain resources from that. In my experience, I found that the best way to gain more resources, or sorry, rather, the best way to grow your solution is by having an actual solution to a problem. A lot of things that go out into the world, and we see this when we go into startup communities, they end up being, very shiny and very jingly. Um, Focus on what problem can I solve, even if it's a tiny one, right? If the resources are limited, focus on a limited problem. There are so many problems and free resources out there that you can solve. The amount of data and code being shared for AI bots, and like right now, if anyone here is a developer and you wanted to build a a small app that detects certain diseases on plants, you can do that. You can go onto GitHub, you can go on to some different data marketplaces and pull all this information, create a data model, and then build that into a code on a mobile app. So I think, yes, you could definitely build solutions with limited resources. I think if your resources are limited, focus on a limited problem. Fix the problem, and then more people continue to ask you for the solution, which will give you more resources, of course. I hope that answers the question, Audrey. No way, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Sherif, for the sharing. You catch me? Okay, okay, no problem. Okay, thank you.
Je crois que Noé avait une question. Noé, tu peux poser ta question.
Okay, I begin.
Bonjour,
Ah, okay.
concerne des applications, le cas de cybersécurité aussi se trouve ce genre de cas ou bien? Parce que il faut se m'intéresser un peu à la création des applications, des logiciels. Parce que on peut pas aussi trop bien.
I'm sorry, Christian, the sound is really far away.
Vu que j'allais demander euh, dans ce genre de cours, on apprend aussi comment créer des applications, des logiciels, protéger des applications, ce genre de choses. Monsieur, vous me comprenez? D'accord. Pas de question, merci.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. And I have one question. What is Dimitra's policy to have its practice adopted within the countries of the Congo Basin? That's all.
That is an excellent question, Nor. That is an excellent question. So we haven't done enough, or I would say too much in the Congo Basin. We, not that we didn't focus on it, but I'll tell you what our strategy has been in the neighboring countries, and we're slowly. So we started up in Nigeria, and we're coming down all the way down to South Africa, right? That's sort of how we're doing it geographically. But essentially, our strategy has been, it's twofold. Okay, for deforestation. The first is the producer's side, the farmers, the cooperatives, and the smallholder farmers, especially. We know for a fact, because the farmer is actually the one who gets the least money in the supply chain. So we know for a fact that digital solutions are too expensive for most farms and most farmers, especially if it's a global company coming into a small country to some small farmers and saying, hey, buy this software. So that's never been our strategy, right? Our strategy has never been to build a software that we sell as this enterprise solution, because you have to be realistic, right? You have to be realistically, you are trying to implement a digital solution in an industry and with users who are not used to that, okay? So our strategy has always been, we focus very much on how do we get the applications in the hands of the farmers as cheap as possible, and in many cases free, actually. The costs end up going to their trading partners, right? But that's only possible by making this connection. So when we go, for example, when we went to work in Indonesia, same thing, small farmers, okay? We brought in universities, we brought in some government departments, And we even brought in a NGO as part of these projects. All of these different organizations, so the university is able to provide education to the farmers for free, right? They're able to provide human resources to the farmers for free. We're able to put our hands in the our application in the hands of the farmers very cheaply. They're able to use these applications to sell their products more expensive to their buyers, and then it naturally builds. So when we started in Indonesia, the first month was 50 farmers, and now we have 3,500 farmers, 2 cooperatives, a university, a government department. So this even ties back to the resources question, right? Yeah, you can do a lot with little resources, right? But our strategy specifically has always been, how do we get a lot of power into the hands of the people with the few resources, right? So that we can expand in that country, okay? And have the buyers buy these solutions. The buyers of these agricultures are the ones buying these solutions, right? The coffee traders, we implement enterprise solutions for them. But for the farmers, we implement the farming solution, right? Just what they need. They don't need this whole big thing. They just need the piece that helps them, right? So to make it short, our strategy in many African countries, and it will be the case as well in Congo when we start getting more on the ground over there, is to partner with cooperatives. We want to partner with government departments that have the same mission, right? That want to improve, the agriculture production, and partnering with education institutes. So we find the agriculture colleges and people who the institutes who want their students to learn hands-on, and at the same time are willing and open to giving information to these farmers for the local benefit, of course. So that's essentially our strategy. It's farmer first, partnering with people on the ground who are already doing this work, helping the farmers with the same mission that's very important for us, right? And then hopefully bringing in this digital infrastructure to smallholder farmers. I hope that answers the question, Noé. And guys, next time I'll hopefully be speaking French. I'm sort of learning. Okay, so next time I'll do the translation, not Makasisa. Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Hello, guys.
Hey, Destino.
Yes. Thank you, Sherif. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear us back?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you as well. So my question, just a quick question. Yesterday, I had a conversation with a friend, and he was giving me this idea of using serial numbers, right? Serial numbers for trees, especially when we speak about deforestation. And I was wondering, like, how do you think one can implement that? If we need to have serial numbers for tree, that way we can track the trees that are being cut, the trees that are disappearing, or the trees that are just burning. Like, is there a way we can implement that? That's my question.
I think there's definitely a way. So like I would say your challenge would definitely be to figure out what that way is, right? But let me give you another perspective. What there's an easier solution? What if the solution is tracking these trees with satellites instead? What if, because keep in mind, right, there is free satellite data out there. You can get free satellite images from Sentinel, from like many of these different satellite companies. So maybe there's a solution where, or maybe the solution is identifying individual trees on images and then identifying when they're gone. So like that's what we built, right? Like we built that. Other companies have built it too. Other people have built something similar as well. So it's not, of course, ours is the best, but that's not what we're here for. I would say, Destino, that maybe there is a solution that way. I think the focus or your challenge will be figure out if that solution works or doesn't, right? In my experience, satellites have been fantastic for identifying forests, but I don't want to discourage the serial number idea. Honestly, like so many solutions come out after an initial idea that's called crazy, right? So if there's a solution, jump for it, but also don't get trapped in the. I see this happen with many business owners, entrepreneurs, creators. They get trapped in trying to force a solution when it's not a solution. If the market isn't, forget the market. If the person you're trying to solve the problem for, it's not being solved, or if it's causing more issues, don't try to force it. You look for your next thing. You want to see if this works, great, let's go for it. If it doesn't, next. You know what I mean? So don't get trapped in paralysis by constant analysis, essentially. But to directly answer your question, why not? That would be your challenge. I would also look into satellites to complement that as well.
Okay, got you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
See, I'm there. So thank you for the speech given, Sherif. So I started late, but I have a question. My question is the following. What are the new tools for protecting the Congo Basin using digital solutions?
What are the benefits, did you say, or did you say the challenges?
Solutions, I said digital solutions.
Gotcha. So I think so. Digitalization. Okay, guys. Why digitalization anyway? Speed of information sharing. The world has constantly changed every time we figured out something new to share information, right? When we figured out telephones, man, things became extremely fast. Before that, the telegraph. After that, after the phones, email, internet. As soon as like when something is digitized, 90% of the time it's for speed of information sharing, and it's the rest is information gathering, right? So let's say you want to something very basic, save the forest or reduce digitization or reduce deforestation in the Congo Basin. Digitization will help you gather the information very quickly. Like, for example, like Destino said, serial numbers could actually be used to help with theft as well. You know, like someone who cuts down the tree to take the wood or the fruit or whatever it may be. Same thing, but like same concept with cattle that's used in cattle, right? The ear tags on stuff. You can use the satellites to see very quickly where are the trees, to react quickly. Let's talk about climate change. Right now, there are North African countries like Tunisia and Morocco who are implementing early detection systems for climate issues. For example, in Tunisia, they have what's it called? A lot of natural fires. So they started building in solutions that give them early warning detection when there's heat spikes and, you know, if there's a lot of dries or droughts, so that people can react quickly and they're not hurt as much or the damage is reduced. Same thing with flooding. They're doing, you know, building flooding in Libya detection systems, right? If the sea level is raising, the farmers get notified, right? So digitization is extremely important because it helps people react very fast, right? Floods may happen in some areas in the Congo. I don't know if it happens often in the Congo Basin, but I know, you know, the country's generally hot and humid and there's a lot of rainfall. And I'm sure you guys, because of that, even notice a lot of changes due to climate. You can develop early detection systems. If there's climate issues that cause damage, one of the best things you could do is develop an early detection system, you know? And that's the importance of digitization. You know, you can't, let's go back to evolution real quick. You know, there's a theory that, you know, the reason why our brains have been able to evolve so much is because out of all the species, we share information the best. We communicate the best. We gossip. So that's the importance of digitization, to make sure that you're accurately and quickly being able to gather and share that data. Why? To solve the problem you're trying to solve. So definitely, Hermana, I think being in the Congo Basin, you guys having physical access to the Congo Basin, right, gives you a much bigger benefit than any company who has all the resources in the world but is not there, right? So you guys have a hands-on opportunity to really know if your solutions work and come up with different solutions. So I know I went a little bit in a couple of different places, but I hope that answers your question, Hermana.
Yeah, I have another question. So, in my country, for example, many people have no mastery of technology. So, how can they proceed with this vision? I'm from Congo, but now I'm in Italian.
It's a very good question. This is actually the biggest challenge we face when implementing is resistance to change. First, let me tell you, Hermano, I've been working in technology for the last 13 years. Even Fortune 500 companies that are making millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue every year, they have digitization problems. They spend months and millions of dollars to implement a CRM, right? Like, you know, everyone has digitization issues. And Dimitra, we often sell to food production companies, right? And their companies in Italy and whatever. And they tell us the same thing. They say, hey, Sherif, you know, the farmers I work with, they don't even use WhatsApp. How am I going to get them to use your technology? The answer is very simple. Any human, any person, anything will use whatever solves their problem. It's very simple, right? So if the solution I'm building, so there's an education component, okay? There's a very big education component. If right now I'm going to work with some farmers who can't read or write, but they've been farming for 50 years, then I can't give them a phone and say, hey, use this, you know, like it's not going to work. Your solution has to be a bit more creative. You have to now have agriculture agents. Say you're working with 5,000 farmers. So you need maybe 100 people who are going to the farms and adding that information. We did that. We did that in Indonesia. We had farmers. There was blind farmers. Can you imagine that? Coffee farmers who've been farming for 30 years. People will always look for ways to strive, right? So if you give them a solution that helps them strive in whatever area, they will adopt it, right? There's always resistance to change. There will always be resistance to change. That's never going to change. All of us in this room resist change when it comes, okay? But we found that the solutions that are giving an actual benefit to the farmers, they will start to use it, and they will tell you, they've told us when we started, we built the solutions, and they were the first time we went to the farmers, they were like, what, this is too complicated, we don't even want to look at it, right? And they taught us what we need to do, right? So always be hands-on, and if your solution solves a problem, it will take a push, it will take some digitization, but don't get discouraged before you start, essentially, is the takeaway, is what I'd want to say.
Yeah, so okay, but I have another question. Is in my hand question, I think. Okay, I want to know, aren't there any drawbacks to linking agriculture to technology?
Are there any drivers relating agriculture to technology?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the biggest things that's affecting the world right now, and surprisingly not many origin countries know much about it, is this EUDR legislation, which is the, deforestation, legislation, where you have to make sure there's no deforestation. But a lot of digitization in agriculture is being driven the same way. It's being driven by laws. So in Indonesia, when we worked with the coffee farmers in Indonesia, it's because their buyer said, hey, I'm not going to buy from you anymore unless you give me this digital information. So there are a lot of drivers in agriculture right now. I would say the two main ones are regulations, and the second one is climate-based. So in North Africa, they're doing these solutions because they have a lot of climate-based issues, so they need detection. So it forced them to do solutions, to pick up solutions. So yeah, many drivers are natural and regulation-based. Governments, and again, governments, when they make these regulations, they make it because of climate change, because of maybe child labor issues or whatever it may be. So yeah, I'd say there's many drivers to agriculture digitalization, especially in 2024.
Now it's okay. Thank you. I'm satisfied.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Glenn, for
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. I think it's very there's a lot of, you need a very wide breadth, because again, people are very resistant to change. The most what made things easy for us to help people was really the partnerships that we made. For example, in Brazil, we were able to help, I think it was like 8,000 livestock farmers, because we were working with a nonprofit that works with livestock farmers, right? And they needed to register their animals, and they needed to check for certain diseases, and we had a solution for that. So we were able to help them. So education is a very big thing, especially if it's regulation based. If the solution is regulation based, you get a lot of resistance. You get a lot of people will say, oh, the European countries forced us to do deforestation, now they're making this law and now I have to comply. So the resistance becomes not just because of education, it also becomes personal. So I think you want to pick this philosophy of, pick the low hanging fruit, right? If the fruit hangs low from the tree, it's best to pick. So I would say look for the organizations that are already talking to the farmers, already helping your target. You know, if you want to help in climate change, who are the nonprofits doing climate change? Where are the competitions? You know, things like this hackathon, right? Um, who can I work with that is already doing something that I can add value to, right? So, you know, education and teaching, you need time, you need patience, you need to listen a lot, because digitization is a very big change, especially in agriculture. This hackathon is fantastic because it's bringing many people who have similar visions and missions together. So I would say seek out those people as well as you try to implement your solutions. Continue to seek those people out, and it makes education a lot easier. I see Manasseh has their hand up.
Okay, good. Thank you for speaking. I have a few questions. First one is how much how much time did it take to develop the solution? And how do you ensure that the implemented solution truly meets the need of the farmer? And also the last one is how would you classify this application? Is it a SaaS service or something else?
Very, very great questions. Very, very great questions. So how long it took us to build? We're still building, right? So you never stop building. That's the important thing. Industry changes and it will continue to change. So we have 5 platforms. I can say we built our first system 4 years ago and it took us, you know, this much money and this much time. But that would be irrelevant, right? Because you're always building. Every time, like when we built our first platform, which was the Connected Farmer platform, when we took it to Indonesia, it turned into coffee. When we took it to Ivory Coast and Cameroon, it turned into cacao. When we took it to Uganda, it turned into livestock, you know, so, or not turned, it's add to it. So actually, we're still building, and I don't think we're ever going to stop building, right? That's the beauty of technology, is that with every new piece of technology, you'll get more information and ability, right? On the question of how we ensure implementation and how we get it to the farmers, the most important thing for us is, you know, again, we need the people on the ground, right? So if we decide to, hey, we're going to work in Ethiopia, for example, before working in Ethiopia, we need to seek out to the people in Ethiopia who are already a farmer, already talking to the agriculture ministry, already have connections with coffee, for example. So we normally seek out those that already have the network, because it's not a matter of, hey, you know, for example, Glenn, you know all of these people in Congo. Let's go into Congo. They're going to trust you, right? Usually I wouldn't know Glenn even going in, right? It would be a matter of, hey, Glenn, we have these solutions. We want to bring it to the Congo. Would you take a look and see if this is applicable, right? So we go to Ethiopia, for example, and we have this presentation with a couple of people, and they tell us, you know, this would work, that wouldn't work. Oh, I think this is great. Oh, I think this is fantastic. Oh, I think that's useless. And we'll start talking to them and getting their feedback. But 99% of the time, thankfully, you know, we've been able to build great solutions, but 99% of the time, every time someone sees our presentation, they say, oh yeah, I want to bring this to the country. Okay. That's how we got into so many of the places that we're in. Thankfully, you know, it's because we built good solutions, but, you know, again, it's usually seeking people on the ground, because it's impossible if I'm sitting in an office in Egypt or wherever I'm sitting. How am I supposed to sell solutions to farmers in Congo? It's not going to work, right? It doesn't work that way. I need to go there. I need to partner with the people there, right? That's why I keep going back to, there are people who are doing what you want to do, so find them and work with them, right? And then the last question, there was a third part to your question, which was how it would be classified. The classification, it's we have 2 types of solutions. We have a SaaS model, and, you know, that anyone can subscribe, download, everything's fine. But we also have an enterprise model. Lately, we've been working more on the enterprise model because this whole deforestation thing, it's never usually just a few farms. It's usually, very big organizations or cooperatives with thousands of farmers. So we've been working more on the enterprise model, but it's at the core, it's a SaaS application. Everything is on cloud servers. You can access it from anywhere in the world. The helplines are available. Like everything you would expect in a SaaS application is there. The implementation model, because remember, the implementation model is part of it, is oftentimes enterprise, because we need to do discovery. We need to make sure it's never one size fits all, guys. In agriculture, it's never one size fits all. Coffee in Ethiopia is very different than coffee in Congo, different than coffee in Uganda. So you have to do a discovery. You have a solution, but you need to configure your solution to what their problem is. So the enterprise side of it is really the discovery, the implementation, the training. The SaaS side of it is the fact that you can subscribe to it and you don't need to talk to anybody about it. You know what I mean? So it's a SaaS application with an enterprise implementation. I hope that answers that part of the question. Manasseh, did I hit the 3 points that you mentioned, or did I miss something?
Yes, you do. You do.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Glenn. I was extremely happy to be talking to you guys, really. Even happier the fact that this initiative is going on. Again, not just me, but everyone in the company, we are very much focused on the locals doing it, right? The locals bringing it there. So I'm very happy to see this. So thank you for having me. Thank you for hearing me go on and on and on. I hope it was valuable. I put my LinkedIn in the chat. If anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to connect with me if you just want to, connect. And I look forward to being part of this group in the future. Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you, Noé. Thank you all of the organizers and sponsors. And especially thank you to those who have participated and given us their valuable time. Thank you all. Take care.
Et, bonjour la team. J'espère que vous allez bien. Je suis Sherif Badwy, un sysadmin. Voilà. Et merci encore pour cette présentation. C'est vraiment, c'est vraiment beaucoup pour moi en tout cas. Merci beaucoup.
Ok. Bon, comme le shérif n'est pas là, je peux me présenter en français alors, parce que la majorité parle bien français, non? Ok, je me présente. Je suis Armina Monda et je suis tellement ravie parce que je me suis sentie pleine en participant à cela. J'ai eu à gagner un plus sur ce. Et ce que je pourrais dire que la prochaine fois, je vais encore en participer pour avoir encore un plus. C'est tout sur ma présentation.
Oui, sans partir. Oui, à monsieur Mabiela Cliff qui se présente. Oui, c'est déjà quelque chose. Hein. Ah, ok. Dans une condition où vous ne peut pas parler.
Ok, merci Zayn. Donc, merci à tous pour votre...
Oui, justement, bon, c'est pas vraiment du dérangement, c'est juste qu'en parlant sur la présentation et autres, c'était pas trop clair la thématique au fait. La thématique auquel on va présenter, c'est ça et ça sera sur quelle langue? C'est ça aussi. C'est concernant la langue au fait. Merci beaucoup, c'est compris, là, c'est clair. Bon, justement, je suis déjà dans le groupe. Oui, on vient déjà de m'ajouter par, monsieur Noé. Oui, OK.
J'ai déjà ajouté Hermina dans le groupe WhatsApp.
Noé, ne m'oublie pas avant m'ajouter.
Quitter la réunion très tôt.
Merci beaucoup, l'équipe. Merci beaucoup.